starting a pedal company is really hard. And for some reason, I took it upon myself last year to come up with this idea for how I could start more of them, which sounds insane. I know. And a lot of people told me that and I didn't listen. A lot of people told me it was a good idea too, for what that's worth. But my idea was to start a bunch of subsidiaries underneath Poison Noises to be able to kind of release some things that didn't really fit the demographic of customer I was reaching underneath Poison Noises at the time. And I wanted to have a broader reach of customers that weren't really interested in what I was doing with Poison Noises. So that, involves making some stuff I wouldn't normally make, making some stuff that I'm not like super passionate about also, which it always makes it harder. Not that I didn't like these pedals or think they were good. I thought they were good. They just weren't the kind of thing that like tickled me as a guitar player, I guess. And those are always the things I want to make. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, it should, to no surprise, there should be a lot of you. I launched a company in November of 2024 called ONE&DONE Effects. I'll put a big logo right about there. That's where I'm going to put it. And they were super simple, easy to use, and affordable pedal line that kind of just did a lot of things that Poison Noises didn't, for better or for worse. I have them in front of me. I want to talk about why we discontinued this so quickly and so abruptly for anybody that was following. The things I think we did right, the things we think we did wrong. More importantly, the things I think we did wrong. I think it's important to talk about your failures as much as it is your successes. Some guys in the pedal community do that. I know Josh has done a lot of cool videos about Ross and stuff. It inspired me to do a couple of things that hopefully I'll do in the future. But I really want to talk about what I learned from this, right? That's something you don't get to see in a lot of influencers' videos and stuff like that. A lot of people talking about what they did right, their successes, not talking about what they did wrong and what they learned from it. And ultimately, that's the information that's always more valuable to me. As I was starting the companies, I wanted to see what people were doing wrong. Not that you want anybody to fail, you want everybody to succeed, everybody to come up with you, but that was ultimately what some of the most valuable information was to me. So first I want to get into it. Before I talk about what I think we did right and wrong, I want to talk about the brand, because a lot of people didn't see it because we didn't share it on Poison Noises social media. We wanted this brand to kind of have its own legs and see how it did by itself and kind of figure out its own market. And let's jump into it. Let's talk about it. There were 7 pedals in the line. Again, I'll put a picture right there. That's where it's going to go. I'll put a picture of all 7 of the pedals up and explain to you guys one by one what they do. So the first one we had, pretty simple thing. This was the ONE&DONE Distortion. Okay. It was basically just a rat with a couple of little tweaks to it. Nothing even really big, just some things I like rats to do. And it was just a big volume control. Why is it just a volume control? Because every time I use a rat, it is just gain and tone all the way up, wide open. That's how I like to use it. And this one was kind of for me, but also I just wanted to have a dirt pedal in the line just because it feels weird to release a line without one. And there's a couple things that kind of like border the territory of dirt, right? But this one in particular, I thought it was really cool. I still use this sometimes. This is actually a batch I'm going to give to Connor for his birthday because he never even really got to play these. Like that's how quick the start and end of this company really was. So next, we'll talk about things that make sense as big one-knob things like a boost, right? We did a ONE&DONE boost. This was basically just an Echoplex preamp. We charge pumped it up so it had extra high headroom like an original unit would. More voltage, more headroom for people who don't know how that works, generally speaking. Yeah, it's really good. It's not even really a volume control. It's actually more of a gain control. I could explain the topology of that, but it's a little confusing. Basically, 1 is supposed to be close to unity, and then 11 is like super saturated, is the way it goes. By the way, these go up to 11. If that doesn't show the target demographic I was going for with this, it was just supposed to be guys who like guitars and loud amps. Like that was kind of the thing. People who aren't super into, big spaceship pedal boards. They were supposed to be kind of similar. The guy who has like just a phase 90, because so did EVH, EVH also did the Echoplex preamp thing. So there were reasons we picked these circuits, right? Other obvious one-knob pedal, I never got to do a gate. So I wanted to do a gate because it didn't make sense in Poison Noises. Everything in Poison Noises was like 6 knobs. It's really hard to put 6 knobs on a gate. Let's say impossible to put 6 knobs on a gate, because I've definitely tried to find a way to do it before by combining it with other stuff. This was it's a great gate. That one I do still use, especially if I'm doing like high gain stuff. I very recently discovered the magic that is high gain amplifiers. I got an OR15 and a JCM 800. And I'm using them a whole bunch right now. I guess the only other real one knob one that makes a whole lot of sense as a one knob was the reverb. It's kind of like a Fender spring tank was kind of the idea. We didn't really have a spring reverb as Poison Noises. I know that sounds weird, but like we had them on our amps. Like I've got tons of stuff that have spring reverbs on them. I've got a JC90, I've got my AC30, I've got my 410 DeVille. All have spring reverb tanks in them, so I never really personally needed one, so I wasn't like excited to make one. A lot of our stuff was just more like DSP for like plates and halls and rooms and stuff, and weird ambient stuff that probably shouldn't exist. Okay, let's get into the controversial ones. One knob compressor. That was one that people on the internet seem to be like, how could you even? It's a set threshold and a volume control. It's based off kind of like a JFET kind of circuit. It's the 3080 chip. I don't know if that means anything to anybody. It's kind of an expensive chip now, funny to think about it. But a lot of the Keeley compressors used that, if that helps anybody think about what kind of compressor it is. I mean, most of the DIY compressors in the world that weren't optical, like that's what they used in these pedals. But it's a big volume control with a ton of gain on tap. Oh my goodness, it can get so loud. But that being said, I used it as a boost probably more than I used it as a compressor. I mean, it's always compressing, but that's more of what I used it for personally. This one people didn't like at all. People just argued about this. I made a delay. Let me tell you why I made a delay. This is a delay that's got about 625 milliseconds of time on it. But the mix and the feedback are preset on this, okay? And people don't like not having control over their delays. I thought there'd be like a market of people who get overwhelmed by the millions of knobs on your conventional delay pedal, but ultimately what do people want on delay? It's at least those 3 controls and tap tempo. Pretty much if something doesn't have tap tempo right now, people are angry about it. And there's not a lot I can do about that with a pedal this small. I could have put a tap in there, but again, we were trying to keep these affordable. The repeats were like, I don't know, let's start with the mix. The mix was like, the initial repeat was about 75% of the volume of the original hit, and then it probably had about 3 or 4 repeats before you couldn't hear them anymore. That's where it was set. I mean, they trailed off still, but you understand what I'm saying. Then this last one, I was like really proud of this last one. I thought it was going to be a really cool thing. This was totally a passion project of mine. We made the mids pedal. It was a frequency band of like 780, fixed Q. But it was just like the gain control for that. Like you could cut all the mids or you could boost the heck out of them. And it made like a really cool solo boost, almost like treble boost territory, but not as nasally, like a Rangemaster kind of thing, like not as aggressive as that, but a really cool solo boost. And I just used it to scoop mids. I hate mids. Controversial take in guitars. I know guitars are like all mids, but the least amount of mids I can have in my signal, the happiest I am. That's actually just a true fact. But that was the 7 pedals we put out. I want to talk about why I thought they would work before I talk about why they didn't work, okay? First thing was affordability. These were $100 a piece. Cheapest pedals, I've made a really long time, since before I was like hand painting tiny little circuits and stuff that I was putting together with like my hands made of 7 components. Like for how complex these pedals actually are, $100 was a real undertaking in trying to make them still like cool pedals, and they even had, like margin for dealers. Like, I mean, that's like the crazy thing. So like, I'll get more into the margin part later, cause that's another point, but $100 still can't even really come close to competing with some of like the Chinese brands and knockoffs and Amazon basic stuff. Like when you can go on your phone and order a pedal for $20 and it comes with free shipping, I mean, the truth of the matter is, like, that's just a really hard thing to compete with when you're a small business in America. It's just hard, arguably impossible, But There's ways around that. We'll get more into that a little bit later. But the next thing was they're easy to use, right? They're one knob. If you can't figure out how to use one knob, pedals probably aren't for you. But I can understand where like some of them are like the one knob thing. Maybe actually it gets in its own way with it. But I wanted to do something the opposite of Poison Noises. A lot of people complain about how complicated Poison Noises pedals are, especially before we changed the names of the parameters. And I know there's like 10 of you on YouTube who just like incessantly comment on my stuff. I'd buy one if it had the silly names for the parameters still. I know that was an audience that I feel like I kind of abandoned by changing them, but like honestly the pedals needed to kind of be able to explain themselves when I wasn't around, because I wasn't at every trade show, I wasn't at every store. I digress. This is about One and Done, not about Poison Noises. So but yeah, I thought ease of use would make it a more coveted product, right? Next, they're super fast to make. I can't even pretend like they're not the fastest pedals I've ever made in terms of building. They're all surface mounted, which is like, this was my first leap into that. And what that means for people who know, so it's just a bad word to some people. A lot of people don't know what it means. Surface mounting means a machine solders the basic components onto the boards. And then pretty much all I put on is like hardware, right? So it's like jacks, switches, potentiometers, which are knobs essentially, the knobs, washers, nuts, like those kind of things. Those are the things I put on, but like the actual resistors, capacitors, diodes, transistors, op amps, like those kind of things come pre-soldered, at least most of them pre-soldered on the boards when they arrive to me. Now, that obviously makes things a lot faster in the end game, but there's a whole lot more work that goes into the front end of like trying to figure out how to communicate to these machines that are on the other side of the world before they come to me, where to put parts, what parts to use, if they're even going to work. Because you also got to keep in mind, without that step completely in my hands, the R&D process is a lot of guessing in the beginning, right? Like, I don't even know if this circuit is going to work or sound good in the surface mount capacity until it arrives to me. And a couple of them gave me trouble, but most of these were actually pretty good, which is why this was the first launch I did, because they were simple enough to the point where there wasn't a lot that could get messed up in that department, but still, that's the point I'm trying to make about surface mounting. They were fast. I could make them really fast, which was a good thing. Next is marketing. In terms of marketing for Poison Noises, basically everything has been word of mouth, which is really cool, kind of humbling, but really cool. Obviously we've been on a lot of shows and podcasts and stuff like that, and that's always been helpful, but ultimately it's just been people talking to me. Like, we've never paid for anything. That's the best way to explain it. A couple of like Instagram and Facebook posts we've boosted just to get a feel for how they work, but no more than like $15, $20, just to see what it does. I never really did anything, for anyone that's wondering. This time we reached out to a big influencer. His channel's Music Is Win. His name is Tyler. Super nice guy. We follow his channel. He does a combination of like cool things happening in music. Here's this cool thing to play. He's just a fun guy to follow, and he's got like over 1 million subscribers, right? I think it's almost 2. And we reached out to him to see if he'd be interested. He doesn't really do product things like that. He also doesn't do a ton of pedal stuff, so I figured, this could be a good introduction to people who don't normally know about pedals, right? So I think that's an interesting market to hit. And we sent him a whole batch of them and got a quote from him. And, I don't want to give away his prices or anything because that's his business, but it's like, a 4-figure number, not high 4 figures, but a 4-figure number, to get like a video that's like under 10 minutes of talking about all the products and stuff. And he made like a little song with them, and it was really cool. He did a good job. It yielded us almost nothing. I mean, I think literally it yielded us no sales, at least not in the first week, which is crazy because it came out on launch day. And not his fault by any means, but like it was just, a loss ultimately is what it was. It was a loss of money and time and energy and stuff on everyone's part. And we also boosted a couple of Facebook posts with like more like a couple hundreds of dollars this time, you know what I mean? And or more Instagram posts than anything, but they kind of cross in the metaverse. It yielded no reward for the amount of money we put into it. Let's put it that way. Last point on this, of my 5 points for this, is margin for dealers. I was able to sell these for $100, and my dealers could still make a decent amount of money off of them. Now, for people who don't know how margin works, you go to your local music store and like, there's MXR pedals in there, but Mr. MXR himself is not in the store building the pedals, right? So how does that work? You send stuff out to those stores at a discount, and then they sell them at the retail price. We call that MAP, minimum advertised pricing, for, whatever the creator of the pedal, the owner of the company, is also selling them for. So I always try to give my dealers 30 points, and that means 30%. So if I'm selling these for $100, they'd be getting them for like 70. And those are literally the numbers I used for these, for full transparency. And then they collect 30 points of the MAP pricing for themselves. That's like essentially their payment, you know what I mean, for helping me sell the products. Which means ultimately I was making these so affordably that like I could turn a profit on selling a $70 pedal. Now, I'm going to let you know, it was not a big profit. This was half a passion project, half just kind of like reaching a demographic, but like still that is not an easy thing to do. I mean, even companies like, JHS doing the 3 Series and Walrus doing the Essential Series, and I know Wampler did like the Triumph. He had another one that came out with that I didn't get to try. It's probably still out there. I don't know why I'm saying like I could never try it again. But like all these companies kind of did these budget brands, right? Keeley did one too right around Black Friday time. And it's like, those are companies that are much bigger than I am. I mean, like I really only have me and Connor. That's 2 employees, you know what I mean? And not for nothing, like we don't make a lot of money doing this, and they don't usually even have 30 points of margins on products like that. Now I have a little bit of insider trading information, so I'm not going to give away what their prices are, you know what I mean? Just from working at Guitar Center and stuff, I was able to see those. I'll tell you right now, like a lot of the products at Guitar Center, especially pedals, like didn't even have the 30 points for like things that were like $250 pedals. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy to think about. And that's why we saw so many brands go to direct to customer sales, right? Where they cut out the middleman and they can still afford to sell their pedals at a price where they make a profit. But obviously you have to buy them direct from the manufacturer instead of buying them from your local music store, which means you don't get to try them. Okay. There's like a lot of reasons that's good, a lot of reasons that's bad, but ultimately it's bad for the dealer and bad for the end user. Cause they're not as available, and you don't get to try them. And now music stores aren't going to have the coolest, neatest gear. They're only going to have the old stuff that still sells to dealers, right? So I had good margins. That's my point for it, on a cheap product. And obviously the cheaper the product, the smaller the margin technically, but still it was feasible, and I wanted to have a good relationship with my dealers still, because that's kind of what got me started, especially in my old hometown. In upstate New York, like there's tons of music stores out there, and I was cool with all of them. 2 of them were my landlords, one for a shop I was running, one for my apartment, you know what I mean? Like I'm really cool with the music scene out there. But I want to talk about now why it didn't work, okay? And these are all kind of counterpoints to everything I've already talked about, so kind of, bear with me on this one. But, why it didn't work, I can't compete with that Chinese pedal pricing. You know what I mean? And not just blaming China. There's plenty of other companies. I mean, most of my stuff came from Taiwan, like in terms of parts and stuff for this. You just can't. I mean, like even if I sold these at $70 and cut out the dealer, I'm still competing with a $25 Amazon Basics pedal. What do I do about that? You know what I mean? And that's a really big question. You know what I mean? Obviously there's different markets, different people. A lot of people are like, oh, I would never buy that cheap crap. You know what I mean? But like, mostly like people are always going to be thinking about that. So, and then there's a point where like you make them too cheap and then people think they're not worth anything. You know what I mean? It's a really hard balance with that. So that was, I think, problem 1, why it didn't work. 2, I think some of them were maybe too simple for people. There's this weird thing that I've talked with other builders in the industry about, and we call it the knob to dollar ratio. And it's such a silly thing. It's like if people pay a certain amount of money, they expect a certain amount of knobs. But like for full transparency, like, the difference between making something hard set and making something a tweakable feature, in most cases, like with this one, it would have cost me an extra 50 cents per knob. I obviously wouldn't be able to fit it with the big one on here. I'd have to go smaller ones, but essentially an extra 50 cents a piece for me to make those controls on the outside. But I didn't want that because that wasn't what the product was supposed to be. You know what I mean? And that might seem silly to some people, but like, You shouldn't just add more knobs to make something more valuable. I like to, there's plenty of reasons to add more knobs, don't get me wrong. I think uniformity is even a better reason for that. So it looks like the other pedals, so people recognize the brand. I think that's more important than just because X number of dollars. Or because it needs it, or because you want to add some features that haven't existed before on it. Like, there's plenty of other reasons. That was not one. But I think that knobs to dollar thing is kind of hurting a lot of people, because now it's like, what if I want to buy a pedal that sounds high end but has easy controls? Well, now, if we follow the knob to dollar ratio, that's going to be an impossible thing to find. What if I want, a cheap pedal that has lots of knobs? You know what I mean? Like, it's a weird, I don't know. I don't know where that idea came from, but it's definitely very present, especially in YouTube comments. I'll tell you that right now. People were not nice on that, on the video Tyler was so cool to make for us and everything. People were not stoked about these pedals, and you gotta learn to kind of let that stuff roll off you and not take it personally, but it's hard, especially when you put so much time and money into something. People's biggest gripe being you're making the one knob pedal series, and they're like, it should have more knobs. It's like, okay, all right, I guess I just totally, missed the mark on this one. But anyways, something that's kind of affecting me more now than it even did then, but something I had to anticipate with all the political stuff happening in November of 2024. Tariffs. I know I've talked ad nauseum about these already, but these were ultimately on the way to become way more expensive to manufacture. Than they were initially when I did all my cost analysis. And that might not have been the nail in the coffin by itself, but when you're already trying to dig out of a hole for something and you see that you're about to lose more money on something that isn't working, kind of turns you off from it a little bit, you know what I mean? So I won't go too far into that right now. Again, I'm not trying to get like political about any of these kind of things, but it is unfortunately part of the reality of pedal making right now. This was probably my biggest mistake, but it's only 0.4. We launched these on Black Friday. Now, from a regular retail perspective, that's when you're supposed to be running deals. And I had some deals on these. Like if you wanted the whole set, you would get 2 of them for free, essentially. So like buy 5 pedals, get 2 free. You would get 7 pedals for $500. I also had like a 1, 2, 3 deal where you could get like one of the dirt pedals, one of the time-based effects, and one of the more like utility pedals for $250. You save $50, and you get to pick like which ones you wanted, right? It's pretty much just get 3 pedals for, $50 off. So 3 pedals for $250 for anyone keeping track of the numbers right now. But there's just so much congestion, I guess is the best way to put it on social media. Everybody's selling stuff. And more importantly, people who have more to play with than I do. Not just in terms of their margin for pedals and be able to run sales and make them cheaper, but also their marketing budgets. Like I can't compete with like Universal Audio's tens of thousands of dollars they're dumping into their marketing every year. You know what I mean? Like I'll get swallowed up. There's no way. Which pretty much only leads like my followers and like the local stores that carry my stuff, which brings me to my 5th point, and that's just that dealers didn't buy any of these. I had one guy, his name's Peter, he's over at Collar City Guitar. He's awesome. He used to be my landlord for the shop. He bought a bunch, but he's a very good friend, and he sold a bunch also. It's not like he bought them and then like took the hit. Like he sold a bunch of them too. And he was always buying stuff for me, but towards the end, he was the only dealer that was buying stuff for me. And then, you do like a lot of self-reflection. You're like, am I offending these people? Am I not making stuff that they like? Are they not selling my products? And you got to kind of keep digging into that. And, again, try not to take it personally. I think a lot of it came down to that the stores were struggling just like I was, and they couldn't take the risk of investment that they could previously when people were buying a lot of pedals in the earlier years of Poison Noises. Those are my 5 points on why I think it didn't work. But I know that's a lot of information all at once, and I appreciate you guys sticking through this. This is my longest video yet. But it was a learning experience, and I'm going to make this batch for Connor and one more batch for myself, and then I'm never building these circuits ever again, For full transparency, again, we didn't sell a single one on Black Friday. We didn't sell a single one until I think 5 days later. It was abysmal. There's less than 10 of each of these in existence. That's crazy. You really don't understand how crazy that is for a pedal company that had the success that mine did. And this is not supposed to be some big woe is me, you should all feel bad for me for not buying my pedal kind of thing, because I know a lot of people didn't even know I was behind it. And maybe that was another mistake of mine also. Maybe I should have just leaned on the Poison Noises brand to make these circuits, but we were making Poison Noises pedals in early 2024, and they were not selling like they used to, and those took a lot more money to make, not as much money in marketing. I mean, this was, like I said, this was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of we need to do something else, which, you know, ended up me being here in DC instead of New York, me losing my shop, you know, me making a lot of really big life changes, among a myriad of other things. My whole life didn't turn upside down just because of the company, but there's a whole video on that also that I can link somewhere. I want to end this on a more positive note. Let's talk about all the goofy merch I made for this stuff, right? This one's fun. One is the toneliest number. This is the caliber of joke we were going for with this brand, right? I mean, a lot of the stuff was just like shirts that had like, you know, the big knob is on it, you know, one is all you need, you know, and it just had kind of the logo right there and stuff on the corner. You know, we had, what else? One-and-done hats, you know, and like this stuff's just going to sit in a box in my closet for the rest of my life. But, you know, I'm a big fan of sewing patches onto stuff. So we made one-and-done patches, and these are like, you know, like embroidered, like these are threaded, you know what I mean? They're not just like cheapo prints, you know. These were the boxes for them originally, which were like really cheap to make because they were just like recycled brown cardboard, but like it even had like all the different, you know, pedals you could get and turn it that way so you guys can actually read it. You know, and the idea was like I could just check it so I could order like the same box for like every single one. It also kind of implied that you could collect them all. I thought that was a fun thing. But what else we got? We had the One&Done distressed hat. You know, again, this was like threaded, embroidered on. Like these weren't these weren't cheap to make, you know. But there was a lot of stuff. You know, this one was this I wasn't even sure if I was actually going to put on the site. Yeah. Knob boxers, dude, with one big knob in the funniest place you can put on a set of underwear. But yeah, guys, that's it. This is the punctuation at the end of One&Done. I probably won't talk about it much more in the future, but I know a lot of you guys didn't know about it, and the ones who did know about it had a lot of questions. Maybe I'll find some place to put all the memes before, because that was honestly just as much work as designing some of these circuits. I'll put the memes somewhere where we can archive them somewhere, I guess. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I'm still trying to get my bearings with the right way to do these videos. Upgraded a little bit of the gear for maybe the next couple I'll do. Right now it's just like my phone and my Pro Tools rig and this like U87 clone that I made like from scratch like 6-7 years ago. I don't even know how long ago. Let me know what I can do different. Let me know what I can show you guys. Let me know what I can talk about. Just let me know if my lighting is bad. Let me know whatever in the comments. Seriously, I can take it. After all this, I can take a lot more hits than I used to be able to take. But yeah, like and subscribe. Do all the YouTube-y stuff, please. And yeah, stay tuned for more of the videos. I hope to be doing a whole lot more of these in the future. So take care.